So this is just an overview of the National Radio Archive, why we set it up, what we're doing, and focusing on the speech-to-text in the middle of it. So before I start, I'll have a quick word from Scott Bryan and Mariella Frostrop on Times Radio, which was recorded in 2022. Oh, I beg your pardon.
The British Library, I didn't know this, they've got 6.5 million recordings in their archive, and this goes right back to the earliest recorded sounds ever made.
I mean, I love the sound archive. There's some just really amazing stuff there.
Right, so the British Library is the home of the National Sound Archive, and within it there are over 200,000 hours of archive radio broadcasts going back to the birth of radio. However, there was an estimated 92% of modern UK radio broadcasts not being preserved. So the National Radio Archive was set up to help to address this. I have just lost my screen on the other thing, so excuse me. So here we have a pie chart that shows how much radio was being transmitted. We have the blue section, which is commercial radio. The green section is community radio, and the red, yellow, orange are BBC networks. So you can see that the BBC do archive their work, but a lot of the other places are not being archived. So hence, that is where the problems occur. So what we have here is a need for a National Radio Archive, and hence that's why we set it up. So our goals were for setting up a pilot radio archive in 2 years that we've just finished. And that was part of the British Library Save Our Sounds project, which was a major project across all the library to save the recordings that we had, some in a very endangered state. We decided we would pick 50 radio stations from across the UK, and that would mean that we could take up to 100,000 hours per year. And we'd test 3 areas: the technical capability, sustainability, and research value. And we would be using speech recognition software to enhance the discovery for our visitors to the British Library. And eventually, we'll have on-site and off-site access. So we had to choose some radio stations, and we wanted to have a good mix of both national, regional, public sector and commercial radio. So we wanted to spread it across the whole of the country. So we chose speech-based content because a lot of the music-based content we already had. So we thought it was better to concentrate on speech-based radio because it would reflect what was happening in the country. So some stations such as Radio 4, the World Service, LBC and Talk Radio are being recorded all the way through the day. So everything is being recorded there. However, most of the others are selective recordings where we choose very carefully which programs we want to use. So this map, sorry it's small, shows the distribution of the radio stations that we chose. And these we chose initially with some BBC local stations and a lot of community stations. And we are swapping them over every 6 months to a year so that we can cover some of the areas on the map that aren't yet covered, meaning that we have a full coverage across the nation of what people are talking about and what issues are important to them. These are some of the radio stations that we have used. Some are currently in use, some have been in use all the time, and others we have only used for a short time. Now, this is the speech to text. So we're working with a company in Italy called CDAT and a company in Ireland called T-Pro, who provide the software. And this is basically how our speech to text looks on the Discovery platform, which was developed by CISIS, now CGI. What you find is that as soon as you click on the wavelength at the top, the text down the bottom here follows it. So where we have the green word, that is where we are so far on the wave pattern. We have a traffic light approach to the speech to text. And basically what we have is everything that the software is confident is correct is in black. If they are 75% certain they've got it right, it's in yellow. And the red ones, which are slightly difficult to see because it's not a very distinct red, but they're the ones that are not very confident at all. But what it does give us is a good overview of what's being said. And with all audio, it's very, very difficult to try and find where on earth we are and what is being said. So at least with our speech to text, we are able to interrogate the waveform and find a part of the speech that we want to investigate a little bit more. So, excuse me, right, this is the traffic light, as I say, and this is a little bit closer so you can see roughly what's happening. So we can see that improve is in green, that's where it was on the wavelength. Some of it is a little bit confused. It is one of those things which will develop in time, obviously because it is a digital format. We can incorporate new improved versions of this over time and even have some foreign language ones which CDAP are working on at the moment, because a lot of our radio archive has programs that are broadcast in languages other than English. So we have Mandarin, we have Portuguese, we have Polish, we have Spanish, and there's all sorts of others as well. Community radio is superb for that, in that they do provide a service for everybody within the community, whether they're English speakers or whether English is a second language, or whether they purely speak their own language. So we selected some programs very carefully, and we wanted to base it on issues that we felt were very important to the communities and also would be newsworthy both nationally and internationally. We wanted to make sure that we could support the underrepresented and marginalised areas of society, and many community programmes look at race, gender, LGBTQ issues, health, disability and the environment. So we thought that it's very important that local programmes which have a national importance should be transcribed. And we managed to transcribe 48,000 hours of our broadcasts, and they are available on the speech to text. So some community radio examples. I've chosen 3. They demonstrate the breadth of subjects that are covered by community radio. We have Radio Reverb, which covers the cosmopolitan city of Brighton and Hove. BCB, Bradford's community station, reflecting the 2025 City of Cultures and varied communities. And Resonance FM, a South London art station that extends to far more than just the arts. So we've had Reverb. This is Bradford, the sort of programs that they have there. We felt that by addressing the important issues and concerns the community radio presenters and guests give, they have an enthusiasm and a commitment to the causes and subjects contained within the programs. And these are rarely heard in national broadcasting. So these are a few examples of BCB's programs. And then here we have Resonance FM. Although it's an art station, you can see that there are also other issues that are discussed in their programs. Not every community station we record from covers all the issues shown in these examples, but the passion does shine through, and the marginalised areas of society have a voice on the airwaves, and they can help reach those that may feel helpless or alone and give help and support to those who need it. Sometimes having a friendly local voice supporting those in need is a powerful thing and is a great addition to our sound archives. The issues are often nationwide subjects, and the Radio Archive can spread that support to a much wider area now. So far, over 70,000 hours of community radio has been archived.
Yeah, I guess there's help out there, isn't there? It's just a seek trying to find the right place to go with the right person to contact. Yeah, you guys are obviously a great resource where people can go to get that information, aren't they?
So, what have we achieved? We've preserved over 300,000 hours of radio, covering the start of a difficult and challenging decade, where listeners can hear the reaction and emotions of those involved in a pandemic, in racial tension, and major social problems and situations. Many archived recordings from all over the country feature the voices of those in society that rarely get heard on a national platform. And these recordings further enrich the British Library's oral archive. We have now an audio archive that can help networks linked to social awareness, race, gender, age, health and well-being, and can help develop policy and research using the voices and experiences of 20th century people. There is a huge archive here that can help these people. So the immediacy of the radio archive, it means that we can hear how people react, feel to new events, circumstances as they happen. And it shouldn't just be the written word that informs research and action plans, but the voices of ordinary people living through these times. All these lived experiences in so many important areas of life can help and educate so many of us and influence people's thinking to make life better for all of society. I truly believe the National Radio Archive can really make a difference to everybody's lives.
What is it that you're really interested in?
If we can collect these moments, we can create a positive change around us.
I think, if anything, if you're inspired by from what you've been listening to and want to find out more, the next best place is probably to visit the British Library.
Very, very good call.
Right, thank you. And apologies for the technical difficulties experienced halfway through.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Neil, for that view into this. I'm sure a lot of folks on the call are really excited by the interface you showed off, which includes that kind of paired textual to waveform interface. I know that, out of curiosity, is that a Windows program or is that a web-based experience?
It is a web-based experience. Yeah. So we worked with a firm in Germany called CGI now. They were called Cysys, and that's where their label was at the bottom. But they've developed the software so that we can use it, and it is web-based. Yeah. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's only available within the British Library. This is things that we're working on. So we felt it was more important to start the collections and to experiment with things such as speech to text and working with the radio stations themselves. And so we have an archive which is growing and growing, and it will be available to people coming into the British Library fairly soon.
Right. I'd hazard a guess that just like we heard from the team in Norway, the release of Whisper may have caused your team to pause and think, gosh, that the ground sort of moved beneath your feet. I wonder if there's any possibility of using the wonderful interface that was developed with Whisper as a back end?
Very possibly. It was designed for our particular program, and we're moving into a totally different way of displaying the audio very, very soon. We have a universal player which is going to link the entire library's collections, both audio and visual, as well as obviously the manuscript pages and the research that is being done. So it's an all-encompassing player which will be available fairly soon. It's being worked on, but I'm sure you can understand the technical difficulties of making something as fast as that mean that we're waiting for it to happen, but it will be very soon. And how we make the interface work will hopefully be very similar to that. We do have another system within the library called Broadcast News, where it's based on news-based programs, which is television. and the closed captioning and the transcript runs side by side with that as well. So it is something that we're working on in all audio and visual material. And the more we can make available to people, the better, the more inclusive it all is.
I want to make sure I open it up for any questions, or either from our other presenters or from the audience itself. One question that came to my mind, and this might be something that Javier can weigh in on, is this notion of Whisper doing such an amazing job at transcription. I see Mike hands up. Mike comes right after me. Whisper does this amazing job at transcription, but one of the things we don't know very much about yet is if the Whisper model is optimized for word boundaries or that kind of specific task of linking up not just phonemes, but linguistic tokens, words themselves with sounds. And I think sometimes this gets talked about in the context of like, can I have exactly the interface that you showed us, which is like the words there and then sort of selecting the relationship between the two. But Javier, I don't know if you have any thoughts on whether Whisper is truly understanding a linguistic concept of words, or if it's just sort of a string of characters that it's trying to map into an auditory domain.
I mean, I'm not an expert in Whisper stuff, but given the trainings we have been doing, it seems like originally the model was pre-trained using timestamps. Mm-hmm. So they have like these 30-second windows that they feed to the model, and then this is a sec to sec. So there is one part that basically takes in the spectrogram of the audio, and then there is another part which is actually a language model trying to put together the relationship between things firing up in the spectrogram and the language that needs to be generated. So it's a small scale but complete language model in the decoding part of the sequence to sequence architecture. So it definitely knows something about language that models like WAF2BAC don't. Yeah. WAF2BAC models are just trying to match a specific pitches and curves and F1, F2 signals in the spectrogram to the phonemes, and then they compose a letter, and then they compose the letter many, many times over many different small time windows at the millisecond level, and then they use a technique called CTC, that's a connectionist temporal kind of loss, to put together all the phonemes that represent a single letter, and they do the same for the words. That's not the case in Whisper. Whisper actually knows something about the language.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, Mike, let me let you come in here. I know you're going to drop some knowledge or ask a question, or both.
Definitely not dropping knowledge, because this may be a completely naive question that it could probably be for both Neil and Javier, which is in collecting these large data sets, are there good standards out there for storing this data in a way that can be fed into these models, or did you kind of have to come up with them as the models were released, as you're trying to fine tune them?
I'll start with a disclaimer. I'm not on the technical side of it. I'm the collector and the curator. So the technical wizardry is all down to our friends at CDAT and TPRO, who work alongside the people at CGI in Germany that produce the model that we use. It's immense what they do, and CDAT are very open for anybody to contact them about speech to text and any transcriptions. They work on a number of wonderful ways of providing speech to text. So if anybody wants information about it, I would suggest that they get in touch with Stefano at CDAT. That's CEDAT, all capital letters, and he would be able to provide you with details of what they can do. What they're doing for us at the moment, this was a trial period. There are so many other options that they have available, which are very exciting. Even facial recognition, I believe they're working on for video. So I would suggest getting in contact with those, and they may open up eyes to all sorts of great possibilities.
One standard that I've seen for these types of text-to-speech models, or speech-to-text models, excuse me, or both, is the LJ speech, or there's kind of these interesting open source, sometimes they're audiobook projects, LibriVox, LibreSpeech, and they tend to include sort of WAV files and then a very simple TSV or CSV file with the file name and then the transcript of the section to varying levels of granularity. Javier, I don't know if you guys have used that, or if what format for data storage you guys use for the SAMI model.
Yeah, we've had nightmares trying to align audiobooks with the actual text.
Mm-hmm.
We had access to some audiobooks in the region, extremely good quality, like professional voice actors reading aloud a book. And then we also have the OCR text of the book, right? So in theory, you can align those easily, but it is not something that can be done fastly. It's very difficult to get those aligned. At the sentence level, it's very difficult to get the exact edition of the book being read aloud. There are things like footers and headers, page numbers, cues for the reader, author notes, footnotes that are messing with the alignment. So the audiobooks that are out there, for example, the LibriVox, that's a good collection because it's already synchronized at the sentence level. Or if they're not at the sentence level, you have chapter level synchronization. So you get the big chunk of text with no interruptions, with no signals to the reader, with no notes or anything. And then you get a audio file that is basically matching one-to-one. So those are easy to use. You can chunk it, and then you can feed it 30 seconds chunks to the model, and the model will be fine. But if you want to do the synchronization of those yourself, you might find that existing solutions are not really good performing for that. In our case, for example, we started collecting data to do a pre-training of our own web-to-vec model, acoustic modeling only. And the way we were processing the text was very tailored to the way web-to-vec models was handling text. So that is extremely normalized, spelling out numbers, spelling out dates, stripping out all punctuations, everything. Because when you use web-to-vec models as a base, then you need a second step in the pipeline to unnormalize all of that and give you proper capitalization, periods, dollar signs, all of that, right? But Whisper is just changing the rules of the game. You can feed it completely unnormalized text and raw audio, and it will find the correspondences. It will know if you say dollar and then a number that you are talking about currency, and put the dollar in the right place, and put the euro sign in the right place, and the dates and everything. So we changed a little bit our approach, and now we are just leaving the raw text. And if we need to do some pre-processing before training another kind of model, we'll do it on the fly.
Yeah. It seems like there was a moment in time where people had, a couple of years ago, people had this great idea of let's add in IPA or like some phonemic transcription system to help account for, you don't have this problem in Finnish, by the way. Finnish and Spanish, totally logical, but in English, Danish, nightmare. How do you know if it's read or read, right? You have no idea. Through these ideas of like adding in these phonemic expressions with IPA or other forms of ASCII, and just the advent of Whisper and others sort of in the production space, in the generative space, diffusion models have just wiped that out, that there's just the power of these models. They can learn from context that it's I read the book yesterday, as opposed to I read the book yesterday, which wouldn't make much sense. The other thing I've noticed about using audiobooks as a sort of source of ground truth is if you want somebody to sound like a nonfiction audiobook narrator, you will get that. And then if you feed it in Harry Potter and the voice actor starts doing all the voices, you know, the different characters, you have to think through what does the language actually sound like. It's very different, like an audiobook of an economics text versus like a voice actor who's really doing all of the characters in Lord of the Rings. You're going to get very different results from that stuff. So,
yep, we had an interesting case because along with the ASR, we thought about releasing a couple of models for TTS for Norwegian.
yeah,
There are no good Norwegian TTS out there for free. And then we rush into the legalities of taking someone else's voices, right, and put it out there for free to say whatever you want. Libre Speech has a couple of books in Norwegian, but each chapter is read a lot by different people. And sometimes they do exactly that. So they make the voice of the characters. So that's not good if you are trying to train a TTS, because then you get different pitch, different, phone, different stuff.
yeah. It really, all these projects make you think deeply about your data. I was actually interested for Neil, dialects or forms of English in the UK. Is this something that you guys knew you were going to have to deal with? Did it pose any problems, different forms of pronounced English?
Well, definitely. I mean, the dialects around the country are immense, and some of the more interesting community stations are those with very strong dialects. So there are ones that we need a good transcript for, and the transcription that we have is pretty good. I think it's more a case of the dialect isn't quite so bad, it's the diction. Yeah. It's having a clear voice. So we have a presenter on BBC Radio London called Dotun Adebayo, and he has an incredibly clear diction, and the transcripts for that are wonderful. And yet you have somebody else who has a rushed approach to speaking, and the transcripts are not there at all. They've done the best that they can. So yes, dialect was something that we do sort of worry about. But as technology improves, we're able to do languages, and so surely the dialects will then be the next approach.
Yeah.
So well, I'm confident for the future, but at this present time, yes, there are problems.
The Norwegians will tell you that dialects are something to be proud of, and they're right,
yes.
Rather than a kind of monolithic estuary English. But I know we're past time, so I just want to thank all of our participants today, and encourage folks who are on the call and who would like to participate and give a lightning talk. Please do reach out to the AI for LAM team. It's always wonderful to hear what's going on out in the field. We learned so much from this. Who knows, maybe some of what we heard today might end up as a talk at the next Fantastic Futures. So remember to watch for the announcement of that location pretty soon. Thanks to all of our presenters today. See you guys later.